Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for their clients and our community. More about A2H's services and markets is at a2h.com.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Memphis elects a new mayor. The 2015 Memphis elections tonight on Behind the Headlines. Welcome to Behind the Headlines. I'm Bill Dries of the Memphis Daily News, and tonight for Eric Barnes, the publisher of the Daily News. And we're here tonight to talk about the 2015 Memphis elections, a surprise in the mayor's race, a surprise by a very wide margin in the mayor's race. We also had 13 Memphis City Council races on the ballot and the race for Memphis City Court Clerk. Joining me tonight to talk about all of that is Karanja Ajanaku with the New Tri-State Defender, Andrew Douglas with Action News 5, and Toby Sells of the Memphis Flyer.
Thank you, Bill.
Gentlemen, welcome, and let's get right into the mayor's race. We'll start with something that not a lot of people got to see in the heat of the battle on Thursday evening, and that is the numbers from all of this. We'll get to that in just a second, but here's a look at the top 4 contenders in a 10-person field in the race for Memphis mayor. And here you see the numbers. Jim Strickland, Memphis City Council member and challenger to incumbent Mayor A.C. Wharton, with 41,829 votes to Wharton's 22,199. Even people who thought that Strickland might upset Wharton, or Harold Collins for that matter might upset Wharton, thought that if they did, this would be a very close race. Collins was third with 18,496. Mike Williams, the president of the Memphis Police Association, with 16,180 votes there. So let's start with basic reactions and what you all thought was going on here. Karanja?
Well, I think that I would have been surprised had it not been for an in-house discussion that we had at the New Tri-State Defender. Several days ago, our president and publisher, Burnell Lee Smith, came through with some numbers and a scenario. And looking at these results and the scenario that he put out, it's pretty much as he had it there, that there was a wider margin that Strickland would win hands down, and presented a scenario in which that could take place. And that's what I'm looking at here. And
he basically said that at some point to the public before the results came in. What was kind of the reaction to that from people who were hearing that for the first time? Well, I think it sort of depends on where your camp is. I mean, obviously if you're a Wharton diehard, or then you're going, no, he doesn't know what he's talking about. If you're a Collins, then you've got a different take. But I have to give him credit. He has a very good a numbers guy that we depend upon, and wow, they nailed it. Andrew Douglas with Action News 5. I believe you guys had a similar discussion, because at some point all of our organizations basically sat down before the polls closed and said, what do we think this is going to be?
Right. And so if you look at it, it was a couple different viewpoints that we were looking at here. First, you looked at Jim Strickland, who ran a very good campaign, stayed on message the entire time. And certainly, people were saying, well, he's not flashy or anything, but he stayed on message. Meat and potatoes, giving him the message, talking about being tougher on crime. And when you talk about crime, that is the #1 priority for all the voters. They all mention that time and again. And you have incidents on the other side here, Wharton's camp. You have Sean Bolton, Darius Stewart. You had the FBI numbers that came out. And then you had the campaign manager, Deidre Malone, right in the heart of those early voting numbers. Then you had the Robert Lipscomb. I mean, it was a perfect storm of negative news on Mayor Wharton's camp, combined with Jim Strickland running a great campaign, because you can't take away from the fact that he was on point every single time and had a lot of ad money as well.
Mm-hmm. Toby Sells, what happened last night? Why did it happen?
Unknown. It was wild. It was a lot of what Andrew talked about. But I think if you're not a pundit or in the press or a political insider, you're so surprised that A.C. Wharton is not the mayor of Memphis anymore. And I think it was a total upset, and it really did take everybody by complete surprise. And again, it was a lot of the meat and potatoes politicking that Mr. Strickland did, and death by 1,000 cuts on the Wharton administration.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, we were both at one event that the mayor was at in the last full week of campaigning. What should have been really a great event that showed the power of incumbency, and that was the start of renovation work on the Universal Life Insurance building. Certainly something he could have touted as an accomplishment for his administration. From my perspective, he was a very grim candidate despite that, despite the day before the $30 million grant from HUD for the Foot Homes project. So I'll go around the table and start with you. Do you think the mayor knew that this was going to happen well before Election Day?
I think that the mayor knew that he was in trouble several months ago. And when some of those first polling numbers came out, he knew he was in trouble. And looking back now, of course, we're doing Monday Morning Quarterback here. Mm-hmm. But when you look back at those different things, like the Universal Life building, and he's defending himself with the Deidre Malone scandal and the money that came in from Taser International. And then on Monday, I think it was Monday of this week, where he's calling Ben Ferguson, a conservative talk show host, defending his record. That would never happen. I was so surprised, and it was awful. If you're part of the Wharton camp, to hear that conversation and to hear it back and forth, I was just so surprised, and I thought, man, he has got to see some numbers that say he's in big, big trouble. And then looking at this, looking at the run out and how it turned out, the rundown here, Harold Collins and Mike Williams, they took up a huge majority of the voters there. In fact, looking at it, Harold Collins was less than 4,000 votes away from A.C. Wharton. What does that tell you? That tells you that there was a lot of people who wanted somebody else in office, plain and simple.
Karanja, do you think the mayor knew well in advance that his own polling had given him some indication that this was going to happen?
I don't have any inside source, but I would say that in that we were able to see the numbers, I feel pretty certain that he was also. A lot of times when you see a situation like that, there are some other maybe intangibles that you can reach for that can maybe help you throw a Hail Mary in the fourth quarter. You can reach deep into your own type of personality, the way that you speak, how you speak, and maybe you rally the folks. And that's never really been his strong suit. And so I think that, wow, he had to play the game out.
Mm-hmm. And that he did. Toby, did he know?
I think so. In the latter days of the campaign, he seemed, unorganized and just not himself, not on message, I think. And I think he was really playing, on the defense, running and also running the affairs of the city. And even his own inside people, the big bombshell letter from Carl Schledwitz, one of his biggest donors and supporters, came out early Thursday morning, saying that Jim Strickland had it in the bag. That doesn't bode well for the campaign.
It was unusual, not only for all of us to see this, but also for Mayor Wharton in 2002, 2006, 2009, 2011. Whenever he runs for these large-scale elections, he wins by 60% plus. So for him to not win or to not be that far ahead, I mean, he has won in landslide elections. And here's the one time that, he got beat by a landslide. So
I think the issues of the day change, and that's what I look at here. When you look at these votes here, it's obvious that people were feeling something here, that they wanted some type of change. Sure. It's not that they didn't want it before, but it says to me here that level there was as much higher. I'm really sort of surprised at Mike Williams and the number of votes that he got there. Yeah. When I look at it, I really see, of the four, I see three winners. I see Mr. Strickland, obviously, Mr. Collins, and Mr. Williams. I think Mr. Collins wins in that he really hammered hard on this idea of we've got to increase the number of African-American businesses and women-owned businesses, and I think that that message was a winner. And I think Mike Williams, his whole deal was, hey, there's something rotten in the hen house. And I think that message resonated with some people, and that, hey, look, we need to pay closer attention to what's happening in there.
So you had three candidates here, Strickland, Collins, and Williams, who were clearly campaigning for change of a general nature. And you had the incumbent mayor who did something that really caught my attention early on, and that was he didn't say, well, I'm about change too, and I've tried to change things while I'm mayor. He came out and said, no, you don't need to change. You need to stay the course on this. In looking at any election in Memphis, there's always going to be a discussion of racial dynamics. And we had Edmund Ford Sr., who had been on the Memphis City Council, who put out a letter during the campaign, who basically accused Harold Collins of being in the race to siphon black support from A.C. Wharton. Is that what happened here, Toby?
Again, I have no inside knowledge on that. There's been a lot of talk around all the campaigns about the motivations of the other African Americans in the race. But on the surface, it looks to me that Mr. Collins and Mr. Williams were in there for the right reasons. They felt they could win. They had a message to deliver, and they did it.
Karanja.
Well, I think the results are what they are, but I don't have any questions about Mr. Collins's integrity and why he was in the race. I mean, in our conversations with him, particularly when he came into the for the interview, he was clearly in it to win it and came across a very mayoral. I think he thought that his measure of that desire for change was significant enough that he could make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, folks from the outside who are going to look at this race are perhaps going to bring this into play. Is that an accurate portrayal of what was going on here?
Well, let's just look at the numbers, okay? So if you take Harold Collins' numbers and Mike Williams' numbers, that's 34,000 votes. That's more than 34,000 votes. And you put those numbers, let's just say for these purposes, you put him in A.C. Wharton's column, he wins. He wins re-election. Harold Collins, though, was in it to win it. And Mike Williams was certainly someone who gained traction on that first debate that we had. I do think, and it kind of goes back to maybe that 2007 campaign when Carol Chumney and Herman Morris, they were asking each other to get out of the race. They never did because they both thought that they had great platforms to choose from. Well, one of them had gotten out, perhaps Harrington wouldn't have won in 2007 because there were more votes cast against him. Here there were more votes cast against Jim Strickland, or not against Jim Strickland, but for another candidate. And they were just split. So, I don't know if that necessarily was the reason, but the results are the results.
Right. I'll just add that Collins actually campaigned here on a platform of I'm the only contender in the race who voted against the benefit cuts to city employees and retirees. And Strickland, of course, voted for them and said, yes, that was absolutely something that the city had to do to right its financial condition. So much to talk about that. And I think with only the second incumbent in the 47-year history of the mayor-council form of government to lose a re-election bid, this will certainly be talked about for some time. But we have other business. We have 13 Memphis City Council races. Let's start with the easy part and talk about who we know is going to join the council. We know 2 of the 6 new council members who will be joining the body. That would be Martavius Jones, who won the Super District 8 Position 3 seat over Mikkel Lowry, the son of outgoing City Council member Myron Lowry. There are the totals for you. A close race here, a margin of about 1,800 votes between the two. Martavius Jones is a former Memphis City Schools Board member, a former Shelby County Schools Board member. And this was expected to be a tight race. For those of you who are runoff provision fans, and I know there are a lot of you out there, no runoff provision in the super district races. So Andrew, Martavius Jones joins the Memphis City Council. I think we've all covered Martavius over the years through the historic schools merger and the aftermath of that. What kind of a council member is he going to be?
That's a great question. And I wish I could expound on his platform. But I will tell you that he's a very personable guy. And I think anyone who's had 5 minutes with him knows that he's very personable and is very successful in business. and talking to members of the news media, especially when he was a longtime Memphis City School Board member and fought for the merger of Memphis City Schools and Shelby County Schools. So he is someone who is very eloquent on camera, knows how to address certain issues that he feels strongly about, and he certainly will have the microphone and be able to express his ideas and thoughts in various directions. I think it is interesting that we have 6 new, regardless of how these runoffs occur and how they turn out, the results are 6 new faces on the Memphis City Council and of 13 members. So it'll be interesting no matter what.
Karanja, was Martavius's service on the schools board during the merger the person who actually proposed the process that kicked off the merger? Was that a factor with voters, or did voters were they not thinking about that?
Well, I'm not sure that they were not thinking about it. I don't know how you can not think about it. I think that Martavius constantly has to deal with that issue. A lot of people still aren't happy about how that went down, but obviously there's enough voters here to put him forward. But in terms of what type of council person do I think that he will be, that he's a studious guy. Yeah. I mean, he does his homework. He's not a reactionary kind of a fellow, and he's not afraid, one thing we know, to speak up and say what he needs to say. And I think that this council, what I hear a lot of people saying, is that we want a council that does their job, but also is going to hold the administration accountable. And his record says that he won't have any qualms about speaking up. Okay.
Toby, we both covered Myron Lowry for a lot of years on the Memphis City Council, and his son Mikkel has his own resume, is his own person in his own right. But I heard an awful lot of Myron in Mikkel's stump speeches.
Absolutely, and the name recognition, and I think folks that cast a vote for Mikkel thought, well, if he's anything like his father, then I'm going to vote for him. Myron, of course, has always been even-keeled, level-headed, runs those meetings tightly and does a good job. And I think a lot of folks were kind of surprised by the outcome of the vote.
All right. Go ahead,
I was just going to say, there were some political observers, because we were watching this race, and there were some political observers that were surprised that Mikkel did not, he wasn't outspoken enough. His name, from what I understand, is Myron. And he goes by, and Mikkel might be a middle name or a nickname, I'm not sure, but his name is Myron. I just feel like, based upon my conversations with some veteran political observers, that they were surprised that he did not use his father more in his campaign. It just didn't seem like he did. Now, again, he's his own person and he wants to have his own track record, but that perhaps was the difference.
Let's go here quickly to Super District 9, Position 2. Philip Spinoza Jr. is the new council member from that district. Everybody elected here, by the way, takes office in January, on January 1st. Spinoza, in a 5 candidate race. His closest competitor is former school board member, new Olivet Baptist Church pastor Kenneth Whalum Jr. And this was one of the big money races in terms of the money that Philip Spinoza raised for this council seat. Toby, you're first up. Your impressions of this race and this new council member.
People have been talking about Philip Spinoza for a long, long time. He came out early. He was endorsed by the Chamber PAC, and folks had him out for a front runner for a long time. And of course, Whalum is kind of a perennial candidate for a lot of things, and got a lot of votes. But I just don't think that a lot of folks kind of saw him as a serious candidate this time.
All right, Karanja, Kenneth Whalum was also running as a reaction to the schools merger. He was also running as kind of the anti-Chamber of Commerce endorsed candidate. What do you make of the outcome here?
Well, I think that Mr. Whalum was pretty clear that I am running on the fact that education is not doing well here, and that we made a mistake with giving up the charter. And I think that apparently that was not enough, broad enough appeal, give people enough different portals for him to make it in. that being said, I don't know all that much about Mr. Spinoza, and so we'll sort of see how he works out.
Andrew?
Yeah. So Philip Spinoza had a ton of TV ads. Every time we had a break at Action News 5, there was an ad either for Worth Morgan or Philip Spinoza, one of those two. And so he's a FedEx guy, and I believe that he had a lot of backing from folks surrounding that part of the city, and so as a result, he's a newcomer, someone that many people haven't known about until the last 6 or 8 months. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
All right. Let's recap the other council races. We won't go into individual cases here, but suffice it to say that Memphis voters, you have one more election in your future for much of the city, and that will be the November 19th runoff election. We do not know who the other 4 new faces on the council will be. Those races are going to runoffs. Those are in districts 2, 3, 4, and 5. District 7 is the other unsettled council race that goes to a runoff. That is the seat now held by incumbent Berlin Boyd, who was appointed to that particular seat. And we will await the outcome of those, and we will probably be talking about that in November, because we will know who the faces are going to be on this 13-member city council. We'll also talk about the other citywide race on the ballot, and that was the race for city court clerk. Thomas Long has been the city court clerk in Memphis for 20 years. He opted not to seek re-election, and a lot of folks ran for the open seat, as is usually the case. Kay Rabilio, a former circuit court judge, a former city court judge, and a former city court prosecutor, won this race over Memphis City Council member Wanda Halbert, who gave up her council seat to run for this position a year after running unsuccessfully for criminal court clerk. Shep Wilbon, former Memphis City Councilman, and the former juvenile court clerk ran in this race as well. And Thomas Long II, the son of the outgoing clerk, was the 4th place finisher in this race. Again, another close race. Andrew, clerks' races don't tend to attract that much attention. But people certainly saw a lot of Rabilio signs and TV ads.
This one baffles me, Bill. Less than 2,000 votes separate Wanda Halbert from Kay. And I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it was pretty public, Rabilio's ethics violation or stepping down amidst a cloud of controversy.
Right. She left the circuit court judgeship in a settlement of a complaint against her to the state board.
Right. So I just, that surprises me. However, with all these high-profile names, so you have Wanda Halbert, you have Justin Ford of Shelby County Commission, you have Thomas Long, the son of the longtime court clerk, and you have some other folks in here. And my only assumption is that just split up the vote, and then you have Kay in there to take up the rest.
All right. About 3 minutes left. Karanja, what do you make of this? How important is the city court clerk's race in terms of the overall general welfare of the city?
Well, I give all the positions their due. It's one of those positions where people come into contact. We all have some direct contact with that. And so here's what we know. We know when it doesn't do well, okay? And people can certainly respond to that. I think that Andrew is right on target there when you look at the names, Rabilio, Halbert, Wilburn, Long, Ford, and even Chisholm, even though it's not that Chisholm. Those are all well-known names in there, and people split pretty good.
Toby? The city court clerk's race, as Karanja said, when something goes wrong with this, people know it. Sure. And even when things go right, they're not necessarily all that enthused about paying traffic tickets, which are the bulk of the business that this does. Very quickly, in closing, the reason that many of you did not see these totals before you went to bed on Thursday evening is because there was another snafu at the Memphis Shelby County Election Commission on this. I actually don't know what to say at this point after this many problems.
I can tell you last night at the Strickland camp at the Botanical Gardens, it was like watching the Super Bowl, but you got to see the last 2 plays and the victory speech. People were baffled. People were they were happy at the Strickland camp, but they were perplexed and angry that they didn't see how it played out.
About a minute left. Karanja, you and I think have been around when election nights were long by design, because that's the way the votes were counted even under optimal circumstances. What should happen here?
We need change down there. I mean, I think we've gone through enough, and given there different things have happened, but things have happened, and I just think it's time to change the makeup.
All right. I think we're going to leave it there at this point. Obviously, as we said, Memphis voters in much of the city, you still have one more decision to make. That will be the November 19th runoffs in the Memphis City Council races. There will be 5 of them on the ballot at that time. We'll close with this note. While we've talked about problems at the Election Commission, there's another problem as well. The turnout for last night's election was 24.9%. It's now been 24 years since more than half of the Memphis voters showed up for a Memphis election. I'm Bill Dries with the Memphis Daily News. Good night.
A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for their clients and our community. More about A2H's services and markets is at a2h.com.